Let's begin with something uncomfortable, something raw, something most people don't want to admit. When a good woman is hurt, the world does not shake immediately. There is no thunder, no dramatic explosion, no loud goodbye. It looks quiet on the outside, calm, controlled, mature, but internally, a revolution begins. Because a good woman does not love halfway. She does not give attention like spare change. She does not invest emotion as a game. When she chooses to love, she chooses with loyalty, depth, patience, and vision. She imagines future conversations. She forgives small mistakes. She prays silently for stability. She believes in growth. She believes in partnership. And when that heart is wounded, what follows is not chaos. What follows is transformation. You see, hurting a good woman does not destroy her. It awakens her. At first, there is disbelief, not anger, not revenge, disbelief. She replays conversations in her head. She questions herself. Was I too much? Did I expect too much? Was I not enough? This is the phase where she blames herself. And this is the most dangerous stage, because good women are trained to self-reflect before they accuse. She studies her own behavior before she studies anyone else's. She adjusts, she softens, she tries to communicate more clearly. She tries to be patient. She tries to understand. But when patterns repeat, when disrespect becomes consistent, when promises turn into empty air, something shifts. And here's what most people don't understand. A good woman does not leave because she hates. She leaves because she finally sees. There is a moment, very silent, very private, where she stops fighting for the connection and starts fighting for her peace. And once that switch flips, it never flips back. At first, she cries, not because she is weak, but because she invested deeply. She mourns the potential. She mourns the version of the relationship she believed in. She mourns the effort she gave. But while she cries, she is also observing. And once observation replaces emotion, detachment begins. This detachment is not dramatic. She does not announce it. She does not threaten it. She does not perform it. She simply becomes different. Her replies become shorter. Her energy becomes guarded. Her availability becomes limited. Her forgiveness becomes measured. And here's the psychological truth. The moment a good woman stops reacting emotionally, she has already emotionally exited. Because when she loves, she reacts, she communicates, she argues, she tries. So if the arguing stops, if the explanations stop, if the effort becomes quiet, that silence is not peace. It is preparation. Preparation to withdraw, preparation to protect herself, preparation to rebuild. And here's what follows next. Growth. Pain sharpens perception. She starts noticing red flags she ignored. She starts connecting patterns she dismissed. She starts realizing how much she tolerated. And with that realization comes power. A good woman does not turn bitter. She turns wiser. She becomes less accessible, more observant, more self-focused, more selective. The same heart that once gave freely now evaluates. The same patience that once excused behavior now sets standards. The same loyalty that once stayed through storms now asks, is this safe for me? And this is where regret often enters the story, but too late. Because here's the reality. A good woman gives multiple chances. She communicates before she leaves. She warns before she withdraws. She forgives before she detaches. So if she reaches detachment, it means she already tried. And when she tries and still gets hurt, she does not scream. She evolves. She invests in herself. She rebuilds confidence. She strengthens boundaries. She glows differently. Have you ever seen a woman who was once soft, trusting, open, and then suddenly she carries herself with quiet power? That transformation did not come from comfort. It came from pain. When hurt deeply, she does not chase. She does not beg. She does not compete. She redirects. redirects her energy to her goals, redirects her focus to her health, redirects her attention to her self-worth. And here's the most misunderstood part. She may still care, but she will never again care the same way, because trust, once fractured, never returns in its original form. It may rebuild, but it rebuilds with caution. When a good woman is hurt, the relationship loses its innocence. The effortless warmth becomes calculated warmth. The spontaneous affection becomes conscious affection. And the magic? It fades. Not because she wants it to, but because emotional safety has been compromised. Psychologically, emotional safety is the foundation of feminine openness. Without it, vulnerability shuts down. And once vulnerability shuts down, intimacy changes forever. Now let's talk about what follows in the long term. She becomes a woman who knows her value. And value awareness changes everything. She will not tolerate inconsistency. She will not beg for clarity. She will not compete for attention. She will not stay where she feels uncertain, because pain taught her something comfort never could. She learns that love without respect is attachment. She learns that promises without action are manipulation. She learns that words without consistency are noise. And once she learns this, she cannot unlearn it. Here is something powerful. A good woman does not regret loving deeply. She regrets ignoring red flags. So after being hurt, she sharpens her intuition. She listens to tone changes. She observes effort patterns. She watches consistency. She studies actions. She no longer falls for potential. She looks at reality, and reality determines access. There is also something else that follows. Emotional independence. When she realizes she survived heartbreak, she understands she can survive anything. And that realization makes her fearless. She stops fearing loss. She stops fearing abandonment. She stops fearing endings, because she already walked through the fire and she is still standing. When fear disappears, attachment weakens. And when attachment weakens, power balances. Now imagine this psychologically. The very woman who once needed reassurance now reassures herself. The very woman who once waited for messages now fills her time productively. The very woman who once tolerated silence now enjoys her own company. That shift is not accidental. It is the consequence of being hurt. But there is something even deeper. When a good woman is hurt, she does not just change her behavior, she changes her standards. She raises them. She requires emotional intelligence. She requires consistency. She requires accountability. She requires transparency. Because she now understands that love alone is not enough. Love must be protected. Love must be honored. Love must be reciprocated. Otherwise, she walks away gracefully. And here's the part that many people underestimate. Once she emotionally checks out, chasing her becomes nearly impossible. Because she is no longer reacting from emotion. She is operating from clarity. Clarity is dangerous. Clarity sees through excuses. Clarity recognizes patterns. Clarity does not romanticize effort. Clarity demands alignment. When hurt, she may initially break, but in rebuilding, she becomes refined. Refined in taste, refined in boundaries, refined in energy. She stops giving unlimited access. She stops over-explaining. She stops over-investing early. She becomes strategic with her heart. And this is not cruelty. This is self-protection. Now let's speak about karma, not mystical karma, psychological karma. When someone loses a genuinely good woman, the absence reveals what presence hid, the care she gave, the stability she provided, the emotional support she offered, the loyalty she maintained. Often these things are only recognized when they disappear. But by the time recognition arrives, she has moved on internally. You see, a good woman does not leave suddenly. She leaves slowly, in stages. First emotionally, then mentally, then physically. And by the time she physically walks away, she already processed the loss. That is why she seems calm. That is why she seems strong. That is why she seems unaffected, because she grieved while still present. And once she finishes grieving, there is no return ticket. What follows when she is hurt is not revenge. It is elevation. She becomes harder to access, but easier to respect. She becomes quieter, but more powerful. She becomes selective, but deeply fulfilled. And perhaps the most painful truth for anyone who underestimated her, she will love again, but differently. She will not overextend. She will not ignore instincts. She will not sacrifice self-respect for attachment. The next person receives a wiser version of her, a balanced version, a protected version, and the one who hurt her receives the memory of what was lost. That is the real consequence. Not screaming, not chaos, not drama, loss, permanent, quiet loss, because a good woman is rare. And when rare things are mishandled, they do not return in the same form. They evolve beyond reach. So when a good woman is hurt, what follows is growth, clarity, strength, and standards that cannot be negotiated. What follows is a version of her that no longer tolerates what once wounded her. What follows is independence. What follows is dignity. And what follows is the irreversible realization that access to her heart was once a privilege, not a guarantee. And once that privilege is revoked, it is rarely restored. And here is something even deeper that most people fail to recognize. When a good woman is hurt, she does not just change how she loves, she changes how she sees. Her perception sharpens. She begins to read between pauses in conversation. She notices the energy shift in a room. She senses inconsistency before it fully reveals itself. What she once ignored out of optimism, she now evaluates with logic. What she once excused out of empathy, she now filters through standards. Pain upgrades awareness, and awareness removes illusion. Before the hurt, she believed in the best-case scenario. She believed effort would grow. She believed misunderstandings could be fixed with communication. She believed loyalty would be matched. After the hurt, she believes in evidence, not promises, not potential, not emotional speeches. Evidence, consistency over time, effort without reminders, respect without conditions. This shift is not coldness, it is calibration. A good woman who has been wounded becomes emotionally calibrated. She no longer overreacts, but she also no longer underestimates red flags. She does not explode, but she also does not ignore discomfort. She learns to pause. She learns to observe. She learns to step back instead of chasing clarity. And here's the powerful part. Silence becomes her strength. Before, she would ask questions. Now she watches behavior. Before, she would explain feelings. Now she evaluates patterns. Before, she would give the benefit of the doubt repeatedly. Now she gives space, and space reveals truth. When someone hurts her, she learns the language of withdrawal. She learns that emotional energy is currency, and she stops spending it where there is no return on investment. Because here is the psychological reality. When emotional investment is not reciprocated, the nervous system goes into protection mode. The body remembers stress. The mind remembers disappointment. The heart remembers inconsistency. So she begins protecting her peace like it is sacred, and peace becomes addictive. She discovers that calm nights without anxiety feel better than passionate days filled with confusion. She discovers that stability is more attractive than intensity. She discovers that emotional security is more fulfilling than dramatic chemistry. This is growth. and growth changes attraction patterns. The things that once impressed her no longer move her. Grand gestures without daily consistency mean nothing. Sweet words without aligned actions feel empty. Attention without intention feels shallow, because once she has been hurt, she values depth over display. And something else happens quietly. She becomes less available to emotional chaos. Drama that once triggered her now exhausts her. Mixed signals that once confused her now bore her. Games that once frustrated her now disqualify the player entirely. She does not fight for attention anymore. She withdraws it. And when she withdraws it, the atmosphere shifts, because the warmth she provided was not ordinary warmth. It was emotional grounding. It was reassurance. It was softness. It was loyalty. It was emotional labor that often went unseen. When that disappears, the space feels colder, but she does not return to reheat it. She is too busy rebuilding herself. And rebuilding looks different for her. She might invest more into her goals. She might focus on her health. She might reconnect with friendships. She might strengthen spiritually. She might elevate her mindset. But make no mistake, the pain fuels discipline. She channels heartbreak into transformation, and transformation makes her magnetic, not in a loud way, not in a performative way, but in a grounded, unshakable way. You can see it in her posture, in her tone, in her boundaries, in her refusal to entertain disrespect. She no longer negotiates her worth, and that is what truly follows when she is hurt. She stops negotiating standards, negotiating boundaries, negotiating emotional safety. She realizes that compromise should never mean self-abandonment. And once she understands that more, she refuses to abandon herself again. There is also something many people overlook. When a good woman is hurt deeply, she does not just protect herself from others, she forgives herself. She forgives herself for ignoring intuition. She forgives herself for overgiving. She forgives herself for staying longer than she should have. And self-forgiveness restores her confidence. She stops seeing herself as naive. She starts seeing herself as loving. She stops seeing herself as weak. She starts seeing herself as brave. Because loving deeply is not weakness. Staying loyal is not weakness. Believing in someone is not weakness. But staying where you are not valued is self-betrayal. And once she recognizes self-betrayal, she never repeats it. Another shift occurs. Emotional detachment from external validation. She no longer needs constant reassurance to feel secure. She builds internal validation. She becomes her own emotional anchor. And when a woman becomes her own anchor, she becomes unshakable. She no longer fears losing someone who disrespects her. She no longer fears walking away from inconsistency. She no longer fears starting over, because starting over feels lighter than staying stuck. And here is the truth most people cannot handle. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give a good woman is heartbreak. Not intentionally, not cruelly, but heartbreak forces evolution. It pushes her into self-awareness. It pushes her into self-prioritization. It pushes her into emotional mastery. She learns to control her reactions. She learns to regulate her emotions. She learns to differentiate love from attachment. Attachment says, I need this. Love says, this must be healthy. After being hurt, she chooses healthy over intense. And that decision changes her future completely. She becomes selective not because she is bitter, but because she is conscious of red flags, conscious of emotional safety, conscious of long-term compatibility. She stops being impressed by charm. She starts being impressed by consistency. She stops being moved by temporary effort. She starts valuing sustained intention. And once she reaches that level of awareness, very few qualify for her energy, but those who do experience a refined, powerful, balanced love. Because pain did not kill her capacity to love, it purified it. She removes overgiving. She removes people-pleasing. She removes emotional dependency. What remains is strength with softness, and that combination is rare. But remember, the softness now has boundaries, and those boundaries are non-negotiable. She will walk away at the first sign of repeated disrespect. She will distance herself at the first sign of emotional games. She will choose peace over potential every time. Because once a good woman has been hurt deeply, she understands something fundamental. Love should feel safe, not confusing, not unpredictable, not draining, safe. And if it does not feel safe, she will not fight for it. She will release it, quietly, gracefully, completely. And once released, it is almost impossible to reclaim the version of her that once loved without armor.